Hi, Gideon Ariel here, speaking to you today from Ofra, which is actually the hometown of Gideon of the Bible, who I'm named after. So I like Ofra. We're at Aaron Lipkin's home by the beautiful Hanukkah candles that his family just lit. And today we were at a very special event in the Knesset. A collection of Jews and Christians got together in order to learn from the Bible, thanks to the Israel Bible and the Yeshiva for the Nations. And right now we're happy to share some of the footage that we took there today in the Knesset.
As we took upon ourselves in the past, our custom is to begin with Hatikva. I want to offer that at the end, when we finish saying Hatikva, to start another custom. By after that, we'll sing "This Is the Day." Besides the fact that today in the prayer we sang it, is also that it doesn't say in the verse which day is it. And the answer is every single day. It's in our hands. Every single day we can wake up in the morning and say, "This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and sing in it. And we will be glad in it," because we understand when you wake up in the morning and you don't let the day lead you, but you have your conscience aware of what's happening and understand that this is the day that God has made, and this is the day that you can make a change in the world, then we will all rejoice and be glad with it.
Amen.
Amen.
So we will begin lighting the candles of the menorah, and we will thank and pray to God that we will be privileged to be flames in the menorah of God, to bring His light to the world. In the evening we make a blessing. When we light it during the day, we leave it without the bracha, and it's Baruch Hashem. So, welcome to the fifth meeting of the Bible Caucus, and I would like to begin with a few words about Hanukkah, and then connect to the where Hanukkah appears in the book. You'll be surprised it appears directly, not even with hints, it appears. But first, we'll just recall that according to the Talmud, Hanukkah was a holiday that was established by Adam, first man. What is Hanukkah? Hanukkah is a celebration that we celebrate at the darkest time of the year. We're talking about when the day is short, the night is long, in December. But not only that, of all the Jewish holidays, they're celebrated usually in the middle of the month, the Hebrew month, where the moon is full. Hanukkah is celebrated the last few days of one month, the first few days of the next month, meaning there's no moon. So it's like the longest night and the darkest night. And when Adam comes to that time and he sees it's getting dark, and he's afraid that the world is coming to an end, and then he remembers that he's connected to the light of the Garden of Eden, which eventually becomes the light of the menorah of the temple. And he understands that even in the darkest of dark, even when it's totally dark, not only can there be light, but you can put light on your window and bring light to the entire world. And from there on, the world can be filled with light and once again be enlightened. And that's our job on Hanukkah, to remind the world that even in the darkest of darkness, even when the world was teaching us that God has replaced us with a new covenant, and He's finished His covenant with the people of Israel, we always reminded ourselves that in the darkest of darks, we had the connection to the light of Zion, to the light of the menorah from the temple, to the light of Jerusalem, the light of the universe. And though some people may think that the origin of the light of the world is the sun, we know that that's only Fata Morgana. The origin of the light of the world is the temple of God in Jerusalem. Hey, the reading clapping. I wanted to speak today a little bit about Hanukkah, how it comes about in the Tanakh. So those of you who have a Tanakh in front of you, or those of you who have a smartphone with Tanakh on it, are welcome. The first we can share and see, open in the book of Haggai. The book of Haggai is of the prophets, of the 12 prophets. Haggai is the prophet who's in the time of Darius, 18 years after the rebuilding of the second temple, or actually not after the beginning of the rebuilding, and the rebuilding of the altar. And then there's a prophecy which Haggai reads, and I'm reading in chapter 2 of the book of Haggai. The whole book of Haggai, by the way, is just a few months. It begins, the very first one, he begins on the first day of the 6th month. Those of you who know the Hebrew month, it's the first day of Elul. And the final prophecy of Haggai, in chapter 2, verse 10, on the 24th day of the 9th month. What is the 24th day of the 9th month? That is the day before Hanukkah. And what does he call this day? I'm going to read what he called this day. In verse 18, take note, from this day forward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, from the day when the foundation was laid for Hashem's temple. That's what it says there, on the 24th of Kislev, the day before Hanukkah, hundreds of years before the Chasmonaim. The Bible tells us that this is the day that the beginning of laying the foundation stone of the rebuilding of the eternal temple. And that's where it is, right over there. It's not numeral, it's not hints, it's directly here in the book.
Wow.
I want to take from that point a little bit about the story of the message of Hanukkah. One of the famous stories is that you come back to the temple and there's no oil. It's all been impure, it's all been contaminated, and there's no real olive oil that's left. And they take that olive oil, and it lasts for beyond what we would think naturally it's available. Now, does that miracle sound familiar? Anybody? Well, once again, we have the Israel Bible. You're welcome to open in the book of Kings, chapter 2. chapter 4, excuse me, book Kings 2, chapter 4. Isha Achat, a certain woman, the wife of one of the disciples of the Nevi'im, cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband is dead, and you know how your servant revered Hashem. And now a creditor is coming to you to seize my 2 children as slaves." Elisha said to her, "What can I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?" She replied, "Your maidservant has nothing at all in the house, except a jug of oil. One little jug of oil, a such shemen. That's all that's left. There is nothing left except her 1 jug of oil." "Okay, then go in. Go," he said, "and borrow vessels outside from all your neighbors, empty vessels, as many as you can. Then go in, shut the door behind you, and your children, and pour oil into all the vessels, removing each one as it's filled." She went in, shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." He answered her, "There are no more vessels," and the oil stopped. So what we see here is that when there's nothing left, there's a jug of oil. And that jug of oil can bring prosperous blessing from God. What is that concept? Well, actually, that story appears before the book of Kings. Where else does that story appear? Maybe you heard a book called Genesis? Genesis 32. When Jacob is describing how he left Israel. What does he say? I'm reading Genesis chapter 32, in verse 10. Let's see, in verse. Are we? Genesis 32, where Jacob is describing. We'll find it. Usually, if you want to find the verse, don't look for it. No, here, 32, verse 11. Yaakov said, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Hashem said to me, return to your native land, and I will deal down with you. I am unworthy of all your kindness." So we're talking about after Jacob spent many years with Laban, and he's on his way back home. And what does he say? He says, "You have so steadfastly shown your servant kindness, because only with my staff alone have I crossed the Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. When I left Israel, all I had with me was nothing, except for what? My staff." Is that the truth? Well, let's go back and see. In verse 28, what happened? Jacob sleeps. He wakes up in the morning after the dream of the ladder. And what does he do? He takes the stone that he laid his head on. He turns it over. And what does he do? What does he do? Do you remember what he does? We'll go into chapter, Genesis 28. And we'll see what he does. Early in the morning, Genesis 28, chapter 8 turn. Early in the morning, Yaakov took the stone that he put under his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on the top of it. Where'd the oil come from? I thought he had nothing. Didn't we say that all he had was his staff? So where'd the oil come from? Well, actually, the story begins way before that. Way before that. In the beginning. Where does it begin? I'll tell you another story. You may have heard of it. The story of a gentleman named Noah. Okay? He's sitting in the teva, in the what do you call the teva in English? In the ark. The flood's over. He has a dove. He sends her out to find out what's going on. She comes back empty-handed. The next day, he says, "Okay, nothing's left." Next day, what does she come back with? An olive branch. Okay, so now let's understand what's going on here. Now it's very simple. And there's nothing left. Nothing left. There is one thing that represents the blessing of God in the world. And that is the oil. The oil which will never mix into anything else. The oil which expresses the blessing of God in the book. If you have a vessel to hold that oil and to understand that your blessing comes from God. If you have a nation where whether it's nothing left, there's only a small little nation, but it's connected to God. It's connected to the light coming from the house of God in Jerusalem. You can bring so much more light and so much more blessings, and you can be blessed by the oil of Hanukkah. And let's all be blessed by the oil of Hanukkah and take that light from the world. And even when the world is destroyed totally, if you find that olive oil, that one little pitcher of olive oil, you can bring light to the entire universe. If you have that one little drop of faith remaining in yourself. And as I always say, my faith is very small. I don't have big enough faith to believe in coincidences, to be an atheist. I analyze things rationally. Amen. And when I analyze things rationally, the only rational explanation I can understand in the world is the hand of God. Amen. And the miracles that He's doing upon us. Amen. So I want to be thankful and say, this is the day God has made. Amen. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you very much.
I couldn't see those during the day. Daytime is for our interactions down here on earth, and nighttime is for seeing the big picture. And how beautiful is it that we know now with science that the light from the stars that I'm seeing is actually light. It takes so long for the rays to get to me that I'm actually looking at ancient light when I look at the stars. And to echo what Rabbi Katz said, we have a word in the English language for a little light that's lit in the darkness that doesn't give you enough light to use, and that all you can do is look at it and enjoy it. It's called a star. Stars, you can't function with the light of stars. The only thing we can really do with them is look at them and enjoy them. The Hanukkah lights are stars. They are lights in the darkness that are designed to make us think about the universe, to make us think big picture. And they shine a light that is ancient, that's from a long, long time ago, that is coming across the cosmos and making us think about God's big world, so that when the sun rises, we know exactly what we have to do with ourselves. That's what Hanukkah is all about.
That's good. That's very good.
We light the Hanukkah candles day 1, 1, day 2, 2. We move up in number. Because as time moves forward, the light expands and expands and expands. There's a second view that we don't follow. There was a dispute. A lot of rabbinic disputes in the Talmud. There's a dispute whether we should do it that way, 1, and then 2, and then 3, or whether we should start on the first day with 8, and then go to 7, and then go to 6, down to 1. What's the dispute about? Well, the dispute is about what are we focusing on? The view that we follow focuses on how much light we've spread in the world. As the days go on, we're spreading more and more and more and more light. But there's another perspective. And it's also true. We don't follow that one in practice, because the human perspective is that we see more and more light as we continue to spread God's word. But there's also a hidden perspective, which is that as we move forward, as we spread light, as we have events like this, all the different ideologies, all the various different ways of thinking that have existed get peeled away, ultimately leading us to a point where there's only one light. So there used to be many, many, many more ways of thinking. People used to believe in many, many gods. And as we move forward in time, there's less and less false ideas. There's less and less. We extinguish those. And ultimately we have that one light, the single light, that we all believe in one God. On that day, the Lord will be one, and His name will be one.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
This is our perspective on Hanukkah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you see that? The offering would be first. Come on, guys. When the first sin in the book, people think that it's eating of the tree in a garden. Even that was not the first sin. Rabbi Shlomo Karlov teaches us. If when God asked man, tell me, what did you do? If he would have said that to God, listen, Hashem, do to me whatever you want, but please don't touch my wife. God would have said, okay, you know what? I forgive everything. Instead, he blamed her, and that was the first stupid mistake. And ever since then, we're here to fix that. So when Jim said, you want to be first, you go ahead. That was the beginning of the return to Garden of Eden.
Well, we're here to thank you for fixing it for us as the nations. And we're so grateful to the Jewish people and the nation of Israel for the victory that you portrayed through the Maccabees, through the Hanukkah story, when anti-Semitism rose up through the Greek culture to influence governments against the ways of God. You stood strong and you preserved the light.
Yes.
Even for 2,300 years of anti-Semitism, you preserved the light.
Thank you.
And in Israel's darkest time, 80 years ago, when the Holocaust began, you preserved the light for the nations.
That's right.
So that we could be here today, so that we can be instructed, that we can understand the ways of the Lord and be successful and worship the God of Israel. And as a member of the Schindler family, I especially want to express my gratitude and how important this day is to me. Because it was 25 years ago that Steven Spielberg released Schindler's List to instruct the world of Israel's and the Jewish people's darkest times. And if you know that movie, it begins with a candle being lit on Shabbat, that the light was still preserved in the darkest of times by the Jewish people, and how a person like Oskar Schindler was led in the ways of God through the righteousness he saw portrayed in his workers who became his saviors, his friends, and his family. So thank you so much. That movie is going to be released this week, again during Hanukkah, December 7th this week, for a whole new generation to be reminded of the great gift we have to the world in the Jewish people. Thank you.
Amen.
I grew up in the heartland of the United States, in a home where we loved Israel and we loved the Jewish people. There was just one problem. We never met a Jew.
That's right.
There wasn't a Jewish person within several hundred miles of where I lived, to my knowledge.
You know, your situation is good because many places there were people that grew up to hate Jews, and there were no Jews there. People grew up to love Jews, and there were no Jews.
We loved Jews, but we didn't know any. I was a college senior in Oklahoma City, having been raised on a farm in Kansas, in a conversation one day with 3 of my classmates, and we were finishing our second year of the study of Greek, the Greek language, Koine Greek. And when it suddenly occurred to the 4 of us, we knew Greek, but no one ever discussed studying Hebrew. And to my knowledge at that time, in evangelical colleges across America, Hebrew was not offered. We thought, we need to know Hebrew, but how can we know Hebrew? We got in my 1963 Chevy, and a 6-cylinder engine that was so small I could get from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2 hours. We drove down the 39th Street Expressway of Oklahoma City with the yellow pages in our hand looking for a Jewish synagogue, something of which we had never been to or ever seen. We went there, we knocked on the door, a cantor opened the door, greeted us, and we said, we're 4 young guys who are preparing to be pastors someday. We don't know Hebrew, and we don't know anybody who could teach us Hebrew. Can you help us?
Wow.
We started meeting with him every Monday afternoon. We never actually learned much Hebrew because we were so fascinated with Judaism. We said, teach us about the ways of the Jewish people. And we ended up, our conversations always turned that direction, and we never got much Hebrew learned. But as I seasoned and matured in my faith, I discovered that there are 2 ways of looking at the world. There's the Greco-Roman way of perceiving the world, or there's the Hebraistic way of viewing the world. And you will think in one of those categories or the other. One is essentially by self-definition, either the worship of so-called many gods, small g, or no God at all. The other one is a keen awareness of reverence and awe of God. In fact, when you train to be a pastor, you train for preaching. Homiletics is the name of the technical name of the course. You right away begin to understand that there's two ways of looking at preach preaching. One is the Greco-Roman way, where the emphasis is oratory. The other is the Hebraistic way, where the emphasis is revelation. So you'll either focus on oratory, which makes me look good, or you'll focus on revelation, which makes God who he really is, the source of all truth. That's the two options in worldviews that we have today. And at this point, thy story ties in with Judah Maccabees. The struggle during the time of the Maccabean revolt, or the wonderful Reformation or revival took place, is really a microcosm of the macro experience we're in right now. The opposition of two different worldviews that are clashing everywhere. That's why on the last day of our tours, when we bring people here, my wife has been, this is her 68th trip here, and she's arranged for over 100 trips. But as we come, if we can, on the last day, I like to go to what is alleged to be the graves of the Maccabees. And we have the bus, people get out of the bus, and I stand there and I pray a Maccabean commissioning upon them. Because that is a picture of what I want them to become like, in light of the two struggles of the two great worldviews that are taking on happening today. So this is Hanukkah is more than just a season of the year, though precious though it is. It's a picture of the struggle against that which is against God and who God really is. We have a ministry, we have the privilege of partnering with this wonderful brother who's become an extremely close friend. He and I share a number of mutual experiences. And with Rabbi Tolling and Donna, which has blessed us so much as we partner with them. We also, my wife and I, we just stepped away from a lifetime of pastoring, and I am now full-time in this kind of ministry, trying to bring biblical truths to governance. We're in our 5th year of a ministry in Washington, D.C., to members of Congress. We're in our second year now of ministry at the United Nations in New York City. But catch this. When we go to D.C., we don't bring the truth of D.C. into the halls of Congress or in the Bible study we have in the State Department. Let me have the Bible for a moment. What we bring is this, revelation. Amen. We don't have anything to offer with a Greco-Roman mindset. What we bring is the Hebraistic understanding of the revelation of God. Otherwise, we have nothing to bring. That's right. We have a ministry in the United Nations. The United Nations is quite self-consumed. We cannot solve the world's problems. And so we go there in our Hammersfold Fellowship, a weekly Bible study in the Secretariat, the 38-story iconic building, with a small group of people who believe there's an answer here. Amen. The answer in these clashing world systems that's represented by Judah Maccabees is God versus all that is light versus all that is dark. And the truth is down here. In the next few days, we will be in the EU headquarters in Belgium. Strasbourg. We'll be in the next few days in Geneva and The Hague, the UN headquarters. And when we get there, The Hague will portray itself as the world court, the place where law comes from. But it's not. The law comes from here. Amen. It comes from this book. And I'm aware with great joy what was given to me, Rabbi, by one of the colleagues you invited 2 or 3 of our Bible studies ago, who presented me with what all of you will recognize as the Nano Bible. 4 million letters carved, only Israeli technology. This is not a microchip. This is carved onto a silicon wafer. The world's largest microscope, the electron microscope, can read the Tanakh. The entire Tanakh is here on my wrist. And I carry that because this is the reminder that it's not by oratory, it's not by human skill, it is by revelation. And so this is a sacred moment. We're in Zion. Amen. We have the Word. We have the revelation of God. And with that in mind, I want to close by just simply praying a commissioning prayer over us to have the Maccabean spirit upon us. In this environment which we set ourselves. If I can quote my conversation, Anna, with you, when I said to her, the time is short, she looked back at me and said, the time is up. That jolted my will. I don't like hearing that. And I want to just commission. You're 15 years of age. I talked to you outside. I thought you'd be the youngest in here. You're not. There's a young boy right over here. He was here a moment ago. Well, now you win the prize. You are the young. I don't know what age he is, but he was younger than you. And I prayed down to the...
How old is he? 10. Okay.
I pray down to the youngest one here, that the spirit of the Maccabees come upon us all, and we stand, no matter what it costs us, like it's been the Maccabees, for the revelation of God. Not the human system, as good with all the wonderful things it brings, but with the truth of God's revelation from Zion. Thank you for the privilege.
And we're very close to the end. As you said, we're here with this group here in D.C., David's capital. I want to conclude with Zion. We're going to, right before the end, we're going to have Rabbi Shlomo Katz sing with us. From Zion comes out Torah, from the Word of God, from Jerusalem. We're only getting a little taste of Rabbi Shlomo because you got to watch him. He puts on a full. You get magneted to his singing and to his love to every single person, as it says in Psalms, for the sake of my brother and my friend, and for the sake of the house of God, I will speak peace upon you. From Zion comes that Torah. Please, Ki Mitzion Torah.
Ki Mitzion. Say Torah, Udvar Hashem, Mirushalayim, Ki Mitzion.